He sold my car while I was at the dentist. Not borrowed it, not moved it. Sold it. That's the sort of thing you don't expect to find out from a voicemail. Hi, Mom. Just letting you know I took care of the car. Sold it to Caleb. Remember him from the club? Anyway, it's gone. Love you. His voice was casual, like he'd dropped off dry cleaning. Not a single pause. Not a hint that what he'd done required permission or apology. I stood in the kitchen with the phone in my hand, trying to remember how to breathe. The tea kettle was hissing behind me, forgotten on the stove, and Baxter, my car, was gone. My Baxter. 42 years of loyalty, rust, and memories. Gone, just like that. I didn't scream. I didn't call him back. I didn't cry. I just sat down at the kitchen table, folded my hands, and let the silence stretch out around me. Neil hadn't asked because he never asks. Not anymore. Not since he started managing my life like I was one of his clients. Simplifying things for you, Mom. Making your space more livable. Taking care of what you no longer need. Those were his phrases. Always delivered with a smile. Always with an undercurrent of something unspoken. You're old now. Let me handle things. And I let him. For too long. The first time was the attic. He came over one weekend and helped me declutter. 2 boxes of books disappeared. First editions, some of them. You won't read them again, Mom. Then came the furniture swap. That couch is bad for your back. My husband and I bought that couch in 1978. I didn't want a new one, but I didn't say no. Then came Baxter. A 1981 Toyota, faded green, vinyl seats cracked from summers and memory. My husband taught me to drive in that car. We took it on every summer trip until his heart gave out. It still smelled faintly of spearmint and leather. It still hummed when the windows were down. And now, without so much as a knock, Neil had sold it. To Caleb, of all people. A man who once asked me if I needed help lifting a pie dish, like I was made of glass. The betrayal wasn't the sale. It was the assumption, the casual, thoughtless certainty that what was mine was his to dispose of. I made myself tea, though I didn't drink it. The water had gone cold. Still, I sat with the cup for a long time, fingers wrapped around the ceramic, as if holding something warm could fix the hollow feeling inside my chest. Neil didn't call again that evening. Didn't think he had to. He assumed I'd be relieved, that he'd taken care of it. At 9 the next morning, I opened the shed. The garage, rather, though I never thought of it as that. My husband built it himself in '89, with reclaimed wood and stubborn hands. It smelled of cedar, oil, and rain. Neil had taken it over a few years ago, turning it into his weekend workspace. Tools, gadgets, half-finished projects. He called it his zone. I stood in the doorway and looked at all of it. So many things, so many expensive, precision-labeled things. And then, for the first time in months, maybe years, I smiled. Not a cruel smile, not even an angry one. Just quiet, resolved. Because what Neil had forgotten was that everything he touched here, everything he claimed, none of it was his. The garage, the tools, the plot of land. He didn't even remember whose name was on the deed. But I did. The next morning, I called Nancy. Nancy Pickett had been my lawyer for 12 years, ever since my husband passed, and I had to face the wilderness of documents, taxes, and signatures alone. She was sharp, discreet, and never once treated me like I was fragile. I'm thinking about selling a structure on my property, I told her, as casually as I could manage. A structure? She repeated, amused. You make it sound like a hay barn. It's a garage, I said. Separate from the main house. It has its own foundation, utilities. My husband built it back in the day. She paused just long enough to read between the lines. And you own the land entirely? Fully, I said. No liens, no mortgages. And the garage is not part of the primary dwelling unit. All right, she said, tone shifting. I'll need to review the parcel zoning and check local ordinances, but it's possible. May I ask who the buyer is? I don't have one yet, I said. I'm just exploring. Nancy chuckled. Of course, exploring. That's what we call it now. We ended the call with a plan to meet the following Monday. I didn't rush. I didn't panic. I wasn't looking to make a spectacle. This wasn't revenge. It was restoration. Later that day, Neil called. I let it ring twice before answering. Hey, Mom, he said, breezy as ever. Just wanted to make sure everything's okay. Fine, I said. You got the message about the car? I did. Good. I know it's sudden, but I figured it was time. Caleb gave a fair price, and honestly, you haven't driven in months. That's true, I said quietly. I haven't. There was a silence, just long enough for him to wonder if something was wrong. You're not mad, are you? He added, sounding more like a teenager than a grown man. I could have told him what I was planning. Could have said, you made your choice without me. Now I'll make mine without you. But that wasn't my way. That would have made it about him. And this was about me. No, I said. I'm not mad. Relief in his voice. That's great. I knew you'd understand. I mean, we're just trying to make things easier for you. That phrase again. Easier. As if life's only purpose after 70 was to be trimmed and quieted down, like hedges that got too unruly. That afternoon, I went into the garage, stood in the middle of it, hands folded behind my back, breathing in sawdust and stubbornness. I touched nothing. I moved nothing. I just looked. Wires, power tools, drill presses, bits and blades and boxes labeled in Neil's slanted handwriting. A stack of extension cords sat in the corner like coiled snakes. And in the back, a refrigerator. Stocked, no doubt, with energy drinks and bottled water. As if this space was his sanctuary, untouched by the world outside. He hadn't asked to use it. He had assumed. Like the car, like the couch, like everything. Monday came, and I met Nancy at her office. She wore a navy blazer and had already printed out the parcel maps. It's possible, she said. You'll need to subdivide the plot, apply for separate utilities, and file a structural survey, but it's all clean. There's no legal obstacle. And the sale? I can list it under a shell name if you prefer anonymity, she said. Or we can go direct. Depends on what you want. I want it clean, I said. Nothing dramatic, no mess. But I don't want my son involved, not in paperwork, not in conversation. She nodded. Understood. There was a pause. Do you want to know what it's worth? She asked gently. I don't care, I said. As long as it's enough to matter. The next 2 weeks passed quietly. Neil didn't bring up the car again. He called once about my prescription refills. Asked if I needed help setting up online orders. No, thank you, I said. I'm managing fine. Sure, of course, he said. Just trying to be helpful. Helpful. I spent those weeks with a notepad beside me, jotting down memories. Not of my son, not even of my husband. Of myself. I remembered what it felt like to drive at night with the windows down. I remembered the sound of Baxter's engine when I turned the key. I remembered laughing, once, So hard at a red light I nearly missed the green. I remembered who I had been when no one else was looking. On a Thursday afternoon, Nancy called. "We've got a buyer, retired carpenter. Wants a quiet place to work. Likes the build. Made an offer 20% above estimate." "Accept it," I said. "Would you like to meet him?" "No." "All right," she said. "I'll handle the closing." That night, I slept with the windows open. The air was cold, but I let it wrap around me like an old shawl. I felt something lifting, not anger, not joy, just clarity. I didn't want vengeance. I wanted room to breathe. Neil didn't notice anything at first. The garage door was still in place. His tools were untouched. The key still worked. That was important to me. Not to take away access before it was necessary. Let him have his rhythm. Let the routine remain until it no longer could. The sale would finalize in 4 days. I didn't tell him. I went about my life the way I always had, tending to the garden, folding laundry by hand because I preferred the quiet of it. I drank coffee at 7, read the newspaper at 8, and walked to the mailbox by 9, waving to Mrs. Langley across the street, who never missed an opportunity to gossip about her daughter-in-law. "You look radiant this morning," she said, leaning over her hydrangeas. "What's your secret?" "Good sleep," I said, and smiled, and saying no. That afternoon, Neil stopped by unannounced. His habit. He let himself in like he always did, though I'd asked him to knock years ago. "Hey, Mom," he called, voice carrying through the kitchen. "Brought you those multivitamins you like." "They give me headaches," I said without turning. "You sure? They're the ones you asked for before." "I'm sure." He stood there a moment, unsure of his footing. "Mind if I use the garage?" he asked. "I left something there last week." "Go ahead." He moved past me, a breeze of cologne and overconfidence. I heard the back door open, then close. I sat back down, picked up my book, and kept reading. 10 minutes later, he returned. "You reorganized," he said. I looked up. "I didn't," I replied. "Why?" "Some things aren't where I left them." "Could have been the wind," I said calmly. "Or time. Things shift." He watched me for a second, and I saw the moment flicker behind his eyes. The moment he wondered if I was playing with him. But he let it pass. "Anyway," he said. "Thanks. I'll probably swing by this weekend. Maybe bring the kids." I nodded. "Let me know beforehand." He didn't like that. It chipped at his illusion that this house, this property, this life was open territory. But he nodded, mumbled something about a work call, and left. 3 days later, the buyer arrived. He came in a modest truck, older than Neil's Lexus, wearing a flannel shirt and work boots. Name was Dennis, 65, recently retired, hands like tree bark. He looked at the garage the way some men look at old violins, with respect and a quiet kind of yearning. "It's solid work," he said, running his hand along the frame. "Older builds like this, they breathe." "Yes," I said. "They do." We signed papers in the kitchen. Nancy handled most of it. I just initialed where I was told. When Dennis left, he paused at the door. "May I ask something?" he said. "Of course." "Why sell something this well made?" I looked out the window, where the light fell through the pecan tree like a blessing. "It was never mine," I said. "Not really, but I've taken it back. And now it's time to give it to someone who'll treat it like it belongs." He nodded. Didn't ask more. That's the kind of man he was. The money hit my account the next morning. It was more than I expected. I didn't touch it. Not right away. I just sat with the knowledge. I had done something, not to retaliate, not to wound, but to reassert a truth. I was still here, still capable of making decisions, still a woman with her name on deeds and documents. That evening, I baked a peach cobbler, not because anyone was coming, just because I wanted the house to smell like something warm. The oven creaked, the timer ticked, and I sat at the table peeling a soft, bruised peach, thinking how lovely it was to choose something for no reason at all. Then, as the sun slid low, Neil pulled up in his car. I watched from the kitchen. He stepped out like he always did. Quick, distracted, already scrolling on his phone. He didn't notice the new lock on the garage door. But he would. And soon, he'd knock. He didn't knock. Not at first. He rattled the handle twice, stepped back, frowned, tried again. I could see it all from the kitchen window. The small shift in posture when something doesn't go the way you expect. He leaned closer, peered into the frame, then tried the key again, slower this time, like the lock might have changed its mind if he were gentler. It hadn't. Finally, he turned and came toward the house. I was pouring tea when he stepped in through the back door. "Hey," he said, flat. "Did you change the lock on the garage?" I sipped before answering. "No," I said. "I didn't change it." He blinked, processing. "Okay, well, my key doesn't work anymore." "I imagine it wouldn't," I said. There was a long pause. "Mom," he said carefully, "what's going on?" I looked up at him then. Not angry, not cold, just steady. "It's not your garage anymore." The silence that followed was thick enough to drown in. "What do you mean it's not?" "I sold it," I said. He stared at me, mouth slightly open, eyes darting between mine as if trying to locate the joke in my face. "You sold the garage." "I did." "You're joking." "I'm not." "To who?" "Someone who paid for it." He set his phone down slowly on the table like it might shatter. "You can't just—" "Mom, that's where I keep everything. My tools, my—" "You should have taken better care of what wasn't yours," I said. "You treated it like your own, but it never was." His face flushed. "You never said anything. If it bothered you, you sold my car," I said, evenly, "without asking." He opened his mouth, but I raised my hand. "I'm not looking for an argument. I'm not asking for permission. I'm telling you, Neil, I did what you did. I acted without asking." His nostrils flared. I saw the tight clench in his jaw, the same one he had at 14, when I told him no to a weekend trip because he'd skipped homework. "I sold that car because you weren't driving it. It was rotting in the sun." "It was mine," I said. "I was trying to help," he said, louder now. "You think this is the same? I was looking out for you." "No," I said quietly. "You were controlling me." He sat down, hard, rubbed his temples. "I can't believe you'd do this. You didn't even warn me." "I warned you every time you ignored my no, every time you assumed, every time you made a decision on my behalf like I didn't still have a name on the title." He was silent. "And now," I added, "you get to feel what I felt. A locked door. A thing you assumed would always be there. Suddenly gone." His voice, when it came, was smaller. "But my things are still in there." "They'll be returned," I said. "The buyers agreed to give you time to remove them, but after next week you'll need permission to step foot in that space." I stood. "That's how ownership works, Neil." He looked up at me. I saw his age clearly then. Not the man he thought he'd become, but the boy who hated being told he couldn't. "Why are you doing this?" "Because I needed to remember who I am," I said. I walked to the window, stared out at the backyard. For years, I let you chip away at me. Thought it was love, that letting go was kindness. But it wasn't. It was convenience. You made yourself comfortable at my expense. He stayed seated. No rebuttals. No justifications. When he finally stood, I didn't stop him. He picked up his phone, glanced once toward the garage. "Is this how it's going to be now?" he asked. Not angry, just tired. "That depends on you," I said. He left without another word. The back door clicked shut. I stood in the quiet house and poured myself another cup of tea. The second steeping is always softer, but the warmth remains. I held the cup close and sat down again, watching the shadows lengthen outside. I had expected noise, yelling, maybe even slamming doors. But sometimes the loudest thing is silence, especially when it follows truth. It took him 3 days to return for his things. No calls, no messages. Just the soft roll of his car tires on my gravel driveway one gray afternoon. I was in the garden, trimming the hydrangeas. I heard the door of his car open, then close. No rush in his steps this time, no jangling keys. Just a slow walk toward the garage, as if it might vanish if he moved too fast. I didn't say anything, just watched him from a distance. He tried the key again, because some habits die hard. Then he sighed, stepped back, and knocked on the door of the garage. Not mine anymore. Dennis's now. The buyer, the man who understood boundaries. Dennis opened the door halfway, nodded. No handshake, no friendliness, just a quiet transaction of time and space. "Take what you need," he said. "Just be done by dusk." Neil didn't look at me once as he started moving boxes, trip after trip from garage to trunk. His gait was slower. Not tired exactly, just unsettled. Like the world had shifted a few inches off center and he wasn't sure which way to lean anymore. I kept gardening. By the time he finished, the sky had dimmed to a tired blue. He stood in the driveway, wiping his hands with an old rag, and looked over at me. "I didn't take the compressor," he said. "It's too heavy for one person. He said he'd keep it." I nodded. He stepped closer, stopping just short of the fence. "You really sold it," he said again, as if trying to convince himself it had happened. "I did." He scratched the back of his neck. "You could have told me." "I did," I said. "You just didn't hear me." He looked down at his shoes, and for the first time in years, didn't try to steer the moment. He didn't offer an explanation. Didn't list reasons. Just stood there, quieter than I'd ever seen him. Then, "You're different." "No," I said. "I've just stopped making myself smaller." He nodded slowly, like someone reading the last line of a letter they didn't know they'd received. And then he left. That night, I sat with the lamp on in the living room, sorting through old papers, utility bills, tax receipts, letters from my late husband. In a folder marked Neil Education, I found the loan documents I co-signed when he wanted to go back for his second degree. Another envelope held the invoice for the deposit I'd made when he bought his first house. "Just until I get through the refinance," he'd said. I wasn't angry, just awake. Awake to all the ways I'd believed love meant saying yes. That motherhood was measured in sacrifice. That silence was the nobler choice. I tucked the papers back where they belonged, but I didn't close the drawer. The next day, I went to the bank. Not because of Neil, not anymore, but because I wanted to decide where my money went, while I still had the right to choose. Evelyn, the manager, greeted me with warm hands and careful eyes. "I want to set up a trust," I told her. "Nothing flashy, just something quiet." "For who?" I smiled. For someone who still listens. She didn't ask more, just nodded and started the paperwork. It took an hour. When it was done, I walked out into the autumn air, light sweater pulled close, and looked up at the sky. Something about October sun, how it softens everything without losing warmth, reminded me of my grandmother's shawl, the one she wore when she canned peaches, humming to herself, telling the world nothing but knowing everything. I stopped by the market on the way home, bought good bread, honey, a jar of olives packed in oil. Things I'd never buy when I was trying to be practical. I wanted the luxury of flavor. Back home, I sat in the kitchen with the window open and let the world be quiet. No questions. No keys turning in locks that weren't theirs. No pretending. Just peace. And for the first time in a long, long while, I didn't feel like something waiting to be managed. I felt like myself. I hadn't seen her in weeks, but when Sophie knocked, I knew it was her even before I opened the door. She never rang the bell. Just a soft knock, 3 times, like she was asking a question rather than announcing herself. "Hi, Grandma," she said, stepping in with a chill of October wind behind her. "Sophie, my granddaughter, Neil's daughter, 19, in college now, tall and quick with her words, but never sharp. She had her father's eyes, but none of his arrogance. She still listened, still watched the world without trying to shape it to her liking. "You hungry?" I asked, already reaching for another teacup. "Always," she said with a grin. "But mostly I just wanted to see you." We sat at the kitchen table. The new olive jar stood between us, half empty already. She took one, made a face, then took another. "You heard," I said. Not a question. She nodded. "Dad told me. Sort of." "Sort of?" "He said there was a misunderstanding and you overreacted. That you sold the garage to make a point." I sipped my tea. I didn't sell it to make a point. I sold it because it wasn't his, and because I was tired of pretending. She was quiet for a long time. "I miss Baxter," she said softly. The car. She'd named him when she was 6. Said he looked like a Baxter, not a Toyota. Used to sit in the front seat during errands, pretending she was on secret missions. We drove to the ice cream parlor with windows down, and she'd yell out made-up spy names to strangers on the street. I'd never laughed harder in my life. "Me too," I said. She reached into her bag and pulled out something wrapped in tissue paper. "I found this in his room. I don't think he meant to keep it." It was the little green air freshener, the one that used to hang from Baxter's mirror. Cracked, scentless, covered in dust. I held it in my palm like a relic. "I thought maybe you'd want it," she said. I nodded, set it gently on the windowsill. We didn't speak for a while. The kind of silence that doesn't need fixing, just space to sit in. Then Sophie leaned forward. "Grandma," she said carefully, "can I ask something?" "Of course." "Why now?" I looked at her. Really looked. This young woman who had grown up in my garden, who once brought me dandelions like they were gold. "Because," I said slowly, "when you spend years giving pieces of yourself away, at some point, you forget what whole feels like. And then, one day, someone takes something that can't be replaced, and suddenly you remember, too sharply, what it felt like to be full." She blinked, like the words had landed somewhere deep. "I want to help," she said. "You already are. No, I mean, I want to be part of whatever comes next. If you're setting things up, if you're making changes, I want to know." I studied her, not out of suspicion, out of awe. There's something about being looked at with clear eyes that makes you want to hand over a map. I've set aside some things, I said. Not because of your father, but because you never asked for anything and showed up anyway. She didn't answer right away, just reached for my hand across the table and held it. And that was enough. When she left, the air smelled of cinnamon and wet leaves. She hugged me at the door like she always did, fiercely, like she was holding something from slipping. I stood on the porch for a while after she drove off. Then I went inside, took the folder from the drawer labeled legal, and laid it on the table. Next to it, I placed a sealed envelope with her name written in ink. It wasn't the final gift, just the beginning of one, a gesture, a bridge. The first step in naming what would belong to someone who never once tried to take. I didn't sleep much that night. Not because I was troubled. Not this time. The opposite, really. The quiet had shifted. No longer the heavy stillness of waiting, but a kind of clean emptiness. Like a room after guests have gone. Nothing left but your own breath. In the morning, I changed the sheets, swept the porch, took the curtains down for washing. Not out of habit, out of choice. There's a difference. I'd forgotten that. By 10 o'clock, I had made an appointment with Martin and Howe, the local estate planning office. A quiet firm tucked between a shoe store and a coffee shop, the kind of place no one notices until they need to. I brought every document I had, titles, accounts, insurance, letters. I even brought a photograph. One of me and Sophie sitting in Baxter, both of us laughing, wind in our hair, a melting cone in each of our hands. When the lawyer, a kind woman named Jean, asked me what I wanted, I answered clearly. I want to decide, before someone else assumes they know better. She nodded, like she understood. Maybe she did. We worked through the options. Trusts, contingencies, provisions for when I couldn't speak for myself. I left nothing vague, nothing assumed, nothing. At one point, Jean looked up from her notes. "And your son?" she asked. "He'll be informed," I said, "but not included." Her pen didn't pause. She'd heard it before. I could tell. After I signed the preliminary paperwork, I walked out into the crisp afternoon, the light slanting sideways, gold against the sidewalk. My feet felt strangely light. My hands, too. I had taken something back, not from Neil, but from time itself. When I returned home, there was a message on the answering machine. "Hey, Mom, just checking in. Hope you're doing okay." That was it. No mention of the garage, of the sale, of Sophie. Just a voice fishing for temperature. I didn't call back. I went to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of apple cider, and sat on the back steps watching the yard shift in the breeze. Across the street, Mrs. Langley was raking. She waved. I waved back. In the distance, wind chimes from someone's porch began to tinkle. Small sounds, but honest ones. I didn't realize I'd started crying until the wind pushed a tear down my cheek. Not sadness. Not grief. Relief. It's a strange thing. To realize how long you've been bracing yourself. Waiting for permission. For apology. For fairness. You learn to live bent and then forget that you're bent at all. Until one day, you straighten. And nothing breaks. Later that evening, Sophie called. "I've been thinking," she said. "You always took care of everyone. You still do. But who ever asked what you wanted?" "I used to forget," I told her. "But I remember now." "I want to make sure you never forget again," she said. And it made me cry all over again. I didn't say anything. Just listened to her breathe on the other end of the line, steady and alive. After we hung up, I went to the living room and opened the drawer where I kept my old checkbook. I pulled out a blank one and began to write. Not for a bill, not a bailout, just a gift, a beginning. I tore it carefully, folded it once, and slid it into a new envelope. On the front, for when you need to choose, not wait. No signature. She'd know. I left it in the drawer for now. Some things don't need to be rushed, just readied. Outside, the wind picked up. Leaves danced like they weren't ready to fall yet. And neither was I. The call came from Dennis around noon. "Just a heads up," he said. "Your son stopped by again." I set my cup down. "Did he let himself in?" "No," Dennis said. "He stood by the fence, waited for me to come out. Polite, mostly. Wanted to see if I'd consider returning ownership of the garage." I closed my eyes. "What did you say?" "I told him I bought it fair and legal, and that if he had a problem, he should speak to the woman who sold it to me." "Did he?" Dennis chuckled. "He looked like he might, but then he got in his car and drove off." "Thank you," I said, "for handling it." "You don't owe me thanks," he said. "It's yours to give, or not." When the call ended, I stayed seated for a while. The sun had shifted across the kitchen tiles, warm in narrow stripes. I could hear a bird tapping somewhere outside, stubborn and rhythmic. I had expected the confrontation to come sooner. Neil was never good at letting go. Control was his way of showing care, or so he told himself. But the silence these past few days had felt too quiet, like a pot left on the burner, just before boiling. I got up and walked to the back door. The garage stood just beyond the garden, unchanged from the outside. It looked almost humble now, like a building that no longer carried someone else's ego inside it. That evening, I baked again. Not out of nostalgia. I just wanted the smell of something warm, the kind of smell that tells the walls you're still here, still living. Sophie came by around 7. She brought a small bouquet of marigolds and a folder full of college paperwork. "You didn't have to bring flowers," I said. "I know," she said. "That's why I did." We ate in the kitchen. Nothing fancy. Just roast chicken, steamed carrots, and the bread I liked from the market downtown. She talked about her classes, a professor who reminded her of a jazz musician, and a paper she didn't want to write because the topic felt hollow. "You don't have to write things that mean nothing to you," I said. "I know," she said. "That's why I'm trying to find the angle that does." After dinner, we cleared the table. She reached for the dishcloth like she'd done it here all her life. "I saw Dad yesterday," she said, wringing it out. "Did he mention the garage again?" "No," she said. "He just seemed off." She folded the cloth, set it down gently. "I think he's starting to understand that it wasn't about a building or even the car." I didn't answer. "You scare him now," she added, not unkindly. I looked at her. "Not because you yelled," she continued, "but because you didn't. Because you did what he never thought you would. Made a decision without inviting him in." I exhaled, slow and full. Maybe that's the only way some men learn what power actually feels like. She nodded. After she left, I sat by the window for a long time. The porch light buzzed above me. Somewhere down the block, a dog barked once, then went quiet. I could hear my own heart. It wasn't heavy. I pulled the envelope from the drawer. The check was still inside, still folded, still waiting. I walked it upstairs and placed it inside the book Sophie had once asked to borrow. A Room of One's Own. She'd find it eventually, not because I'd give it, but because it was hers all along. He didn't call. He showed up. Late afternoon, without warning, just like always. Same quiet crunch of tires on the driveway, same unhurried steps toward the porch. But something in the air felt different. Not tension, exactly, more like hesitation. I watched from the kitchen window. He stood at the front steps longer than usual, one hand resting on the railing, the other fiddling with his watch strap, like he wasn't sure whether to knock or walk away. Then, finally, he knocked. 3 times. I let him wait a moment before opening. "Neil," I said. "Hi, Mom." He didn't smile. His eyes were tired, his jaw tense. "Come in, then." He stepped inside, looking around as if expecting something to be different, but the house was the same. I hadn't changed a thing. That was the point. We sat in the living room. He didn't touch the tea I'd already made, just leaned forward with his elbows on his knees, staring at the floor like the words he needed had slipped through the carpet. "I've been thinking," he said eventually. I waited. I shouldn't have sold the car without asking. I shouldn't have assumed. Still, I said nothing. He glanced up, saw my silence, and added, "You're right. I've been treating your life like something I'm supposed to manage, not respect." I let that settle. Then I asked, "What changed?" He looked startled by the question, as if apology alone should have been enough. "I don't know," he said slowly. "You did. You changed. You've always let things go, let me handle stuff. But this, the garage, it knocked the wind out of me." "Good," I said. His mouth tightened. He took a breath. "I came to ask, not for the garage. I know that's done. But maybe we could talk. Start over. Not go back, but go forward." I looked at him. My son. The boy who once cried when he broke his toy truck, who used to crawl into bed between me and his father during thunderstorms. The man who'd forgotten I was more than a backdrop to his life. "I'm not angry," I said. "Not anymore. But I won't be a figure in the corner, Neil. I won't be nodded to, managed, then set aside." "I know," he said. "No," I said firmly. "You're beginning to know. That's different." He nodded, stayed quiet. We sat like that for a while, in the hush of late day, where the shadows stretch longer than the people who cast them. Finally, he stood. "I'll go." "Do," I said. "But don't disappear. Just don't expect everything to be patched up because you said sorry." He hesitated. Then, "I don't. I just didn't want silence between us." "There's a difference between silence and space," I said. I needed space. He paused at the door, one hand on the knob. "Do you still want space?" "Yes," I said. "But now it's mine, not something I was pushed into." He left quietly. No slammed doors, no sighs, just the click of the latch and the slow retreat of his car down the street. That night, I pulled down the shades early, lit a candle on the kitchen counter. Not for him, for me. Peace, I've learned, doesn't come from waiting for others to see you. It comes when you stop needing them to. I didn't hear from him for 2 weeks. No calls, no visits, just absence. And for once, it didn't ache. It felt clean. I had space to move, to think, to live. I woke without bracing, ate without checking the clock. The house was still, but not lonely. Then, on a Wednesday afternoon, Sophie came by again. She brought lemons from the market and a folded piece of paper in her jacket pocket. "Dad gave me this," she said. "Said you could read it or not. Up to you." I took the paper. Didn't open it. Set it on the side table like you do with something you'll deal with when it stops being warm. Sophie didn't press. She helped me make lemon tea, told me about a short story she was writing. A girl inherits a watch that always runs 5 minutes behind, and it ruins everything until she starts planning for the lateness instead of fighting it. That's not a bad philosophy, I said. Sometimes the delay is the point, she shrugged. After she left, I sat in the quiet again, the letter still waiting, heavy in its plainness. I opened it. Mom, I don't know how to undo what's already done. You were right. I stopped seeing you. I saw duties, errands, logistics. I saw age before I saw dignity. And the worst part? I didn't mean to. I thought I was being helpful. I thought making things easier was a form of love. But it wasn't. It was erasure. You taught me to hold tools, to cook rice without burning it, to shake hands firmly. I forgot that you weren't finished teaching. I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted you to know. I see you now. Neil, I folded the letter back neatly, then slid it into the drawer next to my birth certificate, my husband's death notice, and the first birthday card Sophie ever made. Later that evening, I stood in the doorway of the garage, Dennis's garage, and listened to the soft hum of a table saw. He was building something small, precise. He glanced up and smiled. Evening? Evening, I said. How's it treating you? Like an old friend, he said. No surprises. Just wood doing what wood does. I liked that. We spoke for a few minutes, just neighborly things. Then I turned to go, but paused. Thank you again, for treating it well. Dennis nodded. A thing lasts longer when it's respected. I walked back across the lawn, the grass cool under my shoes. Inside, I pulled the check envelope back out of the drawer, added a note on top of it in pen. For your watch that always runs 5 minutes behind. Grandma. The next morning, I mailed it. No ceremony, no speech, just a quiet transfer. From one hand that had been dismissed too often, to another that had always reached gently. Later that day, a realtor friend of mine called. Still thinking about selling the back lot? She asked. I might be, I said. Had an inquiry. Someone looking for a small plot to build a tiny house. Something quiet. Self-sufficient. I looked out the window toward the shed, the one Neil always said was too old to fix. Tell them to come by next week, I said. I'll walk them through. He showed up again, not unannounced this time. He called first. Can I stop by tomorrow? He asked, voice low, almost unsure. Just me. No kids. There was a pause, long enough for him to think I might say no. Come at noon, I said. Then I hung up. I spent the morning making soup. Not for him, for myself. Carrot and lentil, thick and fragrant. I set 2 bowls on the counter without thinking. Habit runs deep, even when principle is stronger. At 12 on the dot, his car rolled into the drive. He didn't get out right away. Just sat there, engine ticking, before finally opening the door and walking up the steps like someone heading into a courtroom, not his mother's home. When I opened the door, he held out a paper bag. Olive rolls, he said. From that bakery on Main you like? I took the bag. They switched owners last year. They're not the same. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Still figured I'd try. We sat at the table, soup between us, the silence thick but not hostile. He stirred his spoon. I watched him from across the rim of my cup. I was angry, he said finally, when you sold the garage. Furious. I nodded. I know. But then I started thinking, and it wasn't just about the space. It was the fact that you didn't tell me, that you made a decision without me. He looked up then. That scared me, Mom. I didn't blink. You've been making decisions without me for years. He winced. I know. I know that now. The spoon clinked gently against the edge of his bowl. I thought I was doing what was best, he said. I really believed that. Taking things off your plate, making things easier. For whom? I asked. Me or you? He didn't answer. I stood, went to the sink, and poured the rest of my tea down the drain. When I turned back, he was watching me like he had something else he didn't know how to say. You taught me a lesson, he said. Not by yelling, not by guilt, just by doing something I didn't think you'd dare to do. That wasn't the point. I know, but it worked. I walked back to the table, sat again. The air felt heavier somehow, not suffocating, just full, real. You lost my trust, Neil, I said, and not over a garage or a car, but because you looked at me and didn't see me. You saw someone to manage. He nodded slowly. I don't expect to earn it back overnight, he said. But I want to try, if you'll let me. His voice wasn't rehearsed. There was no performance in it. Just a man, flawed, aging, and finally honest. And if I don't? I asked. He smiled, wry. Then I'll accept that too, and still come around, still call, not to change your mind, just because I want to know you again. That surprised me. Not the words, the tone. And it made me realize I didn't need an apology. I needed that. The humility to stay, even if forgiveness wasn't guaranteed. I'm not the same woman you grew up with, I said. I've changed. You haven't, he said. You've just stopped hiding. I looked at him. This man who came from my body, who once clung to my fingers like they were rope, who now sat with his palms flat on my table like he was ready to start again. I didn't reach for his hand, but I didn't pull away either. I'll think about it, I said. He nodded, took a roll from the bag, broke it in half, and passed me one side. Still tastes like the old ones, he said. I took a bite. It didn't, but I ate it anyway. The next few days passed like a quiet tide. No calls, no knocks, just the house breathing again. Not waiting, not watching, just being. I swept the front porch, sorted old linens, trimmed the last of the hydrangeas before the frost came. And I slept. Full, heavy sleep. The kind where you wake up and nothing in your chest is braced. That was new. One morning, I found the envelope with Sophie's name still sitting where I'd left it. I'd intended to give it to her. Or maybe I hadn't. Maybe part of me was waiting for something I couldn't name. But the time wasn't now. Not yet. So I tucked it deeper into the book, placed the book back on the shelf behind the family albums. It would wait. Gifts didn't expire. Not real ones. That afternoon, I took out the photo box from the hall closet, the one I hadn't opened in years. Not out of grief, just forgetfulness. Or maybe fear that looking back would feel like stepping out of time. I sorted them slowly. My husband, young and shirtless, fixing the early frame of the garage. Sophie at 5, hugging Baxter's steering wheel. Neil at 8, holding a frog with both hands and a crooked grin. Me, in a sun hat I hated, sitting on the old porch swing before it broke. So much life, undocumented in memory, preserved in these faded squares. I made 3 piles, one for Sophie, one for Neil, one I kept. And when I was done, I made tea and sat on the back step to watch the light change. Around 5, I saw Dennis walk from the garage to his truck. He had a radio in one hand, an old toolbox in the other. He waved. I waved back. "Hope you don't mind," he called. Tuned the bench lathe. Thing was off by a hair. "Wouldn't know the difference," I said. He smiled. That's the best kind of honesty. As he drove away, I found myself walking toward the garage without meaning to. I hadn't stepped inside since the sale. Hadn't needed to. But now, I don't know. Something called me. The door was unlocked. Inside, it smelled the same. Wood, dust, the faint mineral tang of old metal. But it looked different. Not just cleaner, more grounded. Like someone was tending to it, not just using it. There, on the wall, hung a photo. Framed. Of the garage, half finished, with my husband standing in front of it, a hammer in one hand, smiling like he'd won something only he understood. Dennis must have taken it from the papers I left behind during the transfer. I hadn't noticed it missing. But there it was. Honored. Placed. Remembered. I didn't cry. But I did sit down on the old stool by the back shelf and let the stillness hold me. Let myself remember the sound of my husband swearing when he dropped a nail, the way he'd whistle some old war tune while he worked, the way he'd bring me lemonade without asking, just placing it next to me and walking off again. It's not the grand things that stay. It's the quiet offerings, the unnoticed gestures. I stood after a while, closed the door behind me. On my way back to the house, I noticed something in the mailbox. No flag raised. Just a plain envelope tucked against the side. My name written in Neil's hand. Inside, a photo. Of me. Not young, not posed. Just me. At the garden fence, hands in gloves, laughing at something off camera. And a note on the back. I never saw this until now. I mean, really saw it. You were alive in ways I never stopped to notice. I'm sorry it took losing things to realize what I still have. No flourish, no signature. Just that. I stood there on the porch holding it, heart strangely still. He was trying, not fixing, not pushing, just trying. And that, I thought, might be enough. Not today, not all at once. But eventually. That evening, I roasted sweet potatoes and poured myself a glass of wine I'd been saving. The cork crumbled in the bottleneck, but I got it out with the old trick. 2 knives and a twist of cloth. I drank slow. I didn't toast to anything, just sipped. And for the first time since Baxter was taken, I didn't feel like something had been taken from me. I felt like something had been returned. He knocked again. But this time, he waited for me to open the door instead of letting himself in. It was Sunday morning, just after 8. I'd barely finished my first cup of coffee when I heard it. 3 soft taps, then silence. I stood there a moment, holding the cup, listening to the quiet beyond the door. Then I opened it. He looked smaller, not hunched or frail, just less certain. His jacket was unzipped, collar crooked. He didn't have his phone in his hand for once. "Can I come in?" he asked. "You already did," I said, and stepped aside. We sat in the living room. The light was pale and slow, creeping through the lace curtains like it had somewhere else to be. He didn't speak right away, just looked around the room like he was trying to memorize it, or see it properly for the first time. "I went through your albums the other night," he said finally. "Sophie brought them over. Said I should stop asking questions I already had answers to." I smiled. "She's right." He nodded. "I found a picture of you holding me after that flu I had in 5th grade. You looked so tired." But happy? I was both. I think I've spent years forgetting that you were a person before I arrived. "You're not the only one," I said. "Sometimes I forgot, too." He rubbed his palms together, slow and restless. "I'm not here to fix anything," he said. "Just to say I see it now. The shape of what I took. The shape of what you had to build back after I chipped at it, piece by piece. I let that sit in the air between us. Then I asked, "What do you want now, Neil?" He looked startled, but not defensive, just quiet for a while. "I don't want to undo," he said. "I just want to be welcome, not entitled, not assumed, just welcome." That struck something in me. He reached into his coat and pulled out a small envelope, plain white, handwritten. "I don't want you to read it now," he said. "But when you do, you'll see I've made some changes. Legal ones. Things I should have never had so much access to. I've named Sophie as my executor, removed myself from anything involving your estate. It's not mine to expect." I took the envelope, didn't open it, just held it in both hands. "I'll read it later." He stood like he knew the visit was finished. Like he knew there was power in not pushing the door wider than it needed to be. At the threshold, he paused. "Do you need anything?" "No," I said. "But thank you for asking." And that was it. The door closed behind him with a soft click. I sat in the quiet afterward, not shaken, not relieved, just still. Later, I opened the envelope. It was everything he'd said. Signed, notarized, witnessed. A letter attached, no dramatics, just a quiet acknowledgement of boundaries, of lines drawn not out of punishment, but clarity. I filed it away. Then I went out to the garden. The wind had picked up. Leaves rolled across the path like children late to school. I checked the soil near the fence. Too dry. I carried water from the kitchen in the old metal can, the one with the dent near the spout. It leaked a little, as always, but the water still reached the roots. That evening, Sophie came by. She brought a small tin of cookies and a library book she thought I'd like. We sat on the porch, wrapped in shawls, trading small stories. At one point, she said, "He's scared, you know. He's afraid this version of you won't let him back in." I didn't answer right away. Then, "This version of me isn't new, Sophie. She's just finally not whispering." She smiled. "Good." The sun dropped behind the neighbor's roof. We stayed there until the light was completely gone. Before she left, I handed her the envelope I'd kept tucked in the book all this time. "For you," I said. She didn't ask what was inside. She just took it like it had always been meant for her. "I won't open it yet," she said, "but I'll keep it close." And I believed her. After she left, I sat with the porch light off. No distractions. Just the dark and the sound of wind against the window. There's a kind of strength that comes when you stop waiting to be understood. When you decide your life will be lived, not managed, not explained, just lived. I didn't need anyone to agree anymore. I just needed the quiet to tell the truth back to me. And it did. The next morning brought fog. The kind that softens everything, even the sharp corners of memory. It hung low across the garden, settled into the creases of the lawn chairs, and made the porch feel like a small ship drifting in place. I liked it. I made oatmeal the slow way, stirring it until the kitchen filled with the smell of cinnamon and warmth. I ate quietly, watching the fog shift, as if the world were deciding whether to reveal itself. Around 9, the doorbell rang. Not a knock this time, a bell. I wiped my hands, walked to the door, and opened it to find Dennis holding a small wooden box, the kind you don't buy, the kind you make. "Morning," he said. "Hope I'm not early?" "Not for me," I said. "Come in." He set the box on the kitchen counter, careful, like it carried more than weight. "What's this?" "A thank you," he said. "Or maybe a tribute. I finished it last night." He opened the lid. Inside, It was lined with soft, dark velvet and fitted to hold only one thing: keys. My keys. To Baxter. I stared at them, resting in their little hollow, still attached to the old leather fob with the faded stitching. I hadn't seen them since Neil sold the car. Didn't even know he'd left them behind. I found them in the back of the cabinet in the garage, Dennis said. Thought maybe they deserved better than a drawer. I ran my hand along the smooth edge of the box. The wood was warm, polished, sanded by someone who knew how to shape things gently. "Thank you," I said. "Not just for the box." He nodded. "It was a good garage, still is, but it never felt like mine until you gave it away." That struck something deep. "Funny," I said. "It never felt like mine until I did." We sat for a while, sipping tea, saying little. Just the quiet kind of company that doesn't take anything from you. Before he left, Dennis paused by the door. "If you ever want to use it," he said, "for anything at all, you don't have to ask." "I know," I said, "but I will anyway." After he left, I carried the box into the living room, set it on the windowsill where the sun could find it. I didn't cry, but I did sit for a long time, holding those keys, remembering what it felt like to drive down a quiet road with no one expecting you to arrive on time, just moving, just going. Around noon, I got a message from Sophie. Opened it. "Thank you. I'll use it wisely. I promise. Love you." That was all. I didn't reply. Not because I didn't feel the same, but because some things don't need answering. They just land where they should. That afternoon, I went into the shed. The one Neil said wasn't worth keeping. The one I'd left untouched for years. It smelled of damp wood and disuse, but it still stood. The walls were solid, the roof firm. I opened the small window and let the air in, and then I began. Not sweeping, not organizing, just choosing what stayed and what didn't. A shelf of jam jars, a broken stool, my husband's old gardening gloves, stiff with time. I kept them. Not because I needed them, because they reminded me that things made with care can outlast neglect. The sun slid low while I worked. By dusk, I'd cleared a small corner. Nothing grand, just space. Enough for a chair, a light, a room of my own. That evening, I stood on the back step and looked at the house. The windows glowing, the porch humming with quiet life. And I thought, this is how reclamation looks. Not like fire, like light. Autumn deepened. The leaves gave up slowly this year, as if reluctant to surrender what was bright. Every morning I swept the porch, and every morning it was covered again by dusk. There was something comforting in that cycle. The falling, the clearing, the falling again. Some things, I've learned, aren't meant to stay fixed. They're meant to be tended. One afternoon, I opened the drawer and found Neil's letter again. Not by accident. I'd been thinking of it. Not the words. Those I'd memorized. But the act of writing it. The way he folded himself into admission without asking for applause. I wrote him back. Short. Honest. "Neil, I hear you. That matters. That doesn't mean all is healed, but it means healing is possible. We begin again, if we begin gently. Mom." I left it in the mailbox. No text, no call. Just the words. Waiting. That night, I lit a candle and sat at the small desk I'd moved into the cleared shed. I brought a blanket, a pen, and a book. The window creaked when the wind moved through, but the walls held. Everything held. Sophie came by on a Thursday. She let herself in, calling out softly before walking into the kitchen. "Brought pears," she said. They're ugly, but sweet. They always are, I said. We sliced them, ate them standing at the counter. No plates, just paper towels and laughter. Did you get my message? She asked. I did. She reached for my hand. It'll help more than you know. I don't need to know, I said. I just trust you. After she left, I went upstairs and opened the old cedar chest at the end of the bed. Inside were things I hadn't touched in years. Shawls, church programs, the quilt I started and never finished. I pulled it out, unfolded it across my lap, sat with it for a long time. Some stories stay incomplete because we forget we're allowed to pick them back up. The next morning, I started sewing again. Not to finish it, just to continue. That week, the fog lifted for good. The air turned sharp and honest. The wind chimes returned. So did the birds. And then one morning, as I stepped out to sweep, I found a small package on the porch, wrapped in brown paper, my name written in Sophie's hand. Inside, a new pair of gardening gloves, deep green, soft leather, strong stitching. Underneath them, a note. You kept everything alive, even when no one noticed. These are for whatever you choose to grow next. I sat on the step holding that note in both hands, and I wept. Not from pain, from recognition. Because in the end, that's all any of us want. To be seen. Not for what we used to be, or what others assumed we should become, but for what we quietly are, every ordinary day. Now I wake before the sun. I walk barefoot across cold kitchen tiles. I boil water, peel fruit, write in a notebook no one else will read. I say yes less often. But when I do, I mean it. I keep a spare key to the shed in the new wooden box Dennis made. I keep Sophie's note under my pillow. I keep Neil's letter folded small in my wallet. Not because I need it, but because I earned it. And I keep space. For myself, for silence, for late-in-life beginnings. Because it's never too late to return to yourself. And if you've read this far, I hope you know that too. We don't need permission to reclaim what was always ours. We just need to begin. And if this story stayed with you, if you felt a piece of yourself tucked somewhere inside these quiet turns, I'd love to know. Leave a comment. Share it with someone who's still finding her way back to her own name. We begin again. Always. Together.